Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Harrogate series. Harrogate is a large borough, one of the 11 districts of North Yorkshire. It's got 139 civil parishes. Which one are we in this episode? Welcome back to Harrogate again, everybody, and to the most important one historically I've done so far in this part of Yorkshire. This one has plenty of ancient monuments and ancient buildings to look at, but you're not going to get any more important than the castle ruins. Welcome to the parish of Spofforth with Stockeld. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Spofforth with Stockeld, land by a ford with a log fire. Alright everyone, welcome to the biggest and most historically important village in the southeastern corner of the Harrogate district, one with the ruins of a 13th century castle which attract people from miles around. Those ruins are located in Spofforth, about 3 miles northwest of Wetherby and 5 miles south of Harrogate. Spofforth stands on the River Crimple, a tributary of the River Nidd. That ties in nicely with its name. Spofforth is first attested in the Domesday Book, where it appears as Spoford. The name comes from the Old English word spot, which means plot of land, and ford, which is, well, a ford, which passed over the Crimple. Spofforth grew as a village at a time when Knaresborough was the most important town in the area. It's not all about the castle here either. There are several notable features in this one, including the church, an old corn mill, another cricket club, and the route of an old railway. Modern amenities include 2 pubs, a shop, and a school. Notable people to have lived here include the 18th century Knaresborough road builder, Blind Jack Metcalfe. He spent the later years of his life here, and now he rests in the churchyard. And that's all before we've considered Stockeld, which is a whole other ballgame. So come with me as we delve into Harrogate once again. We begin close to a roundabout right in the middle of civilization. This is Harrogate Road, which runs away from the centre towards North Deaton. Despite several attempts to build a bypass around the village, this, the A661, remains the main route through Spofforth today. As you head east, you'll be met with the tall tower of All Saints Church. This building serves as the main church for an ecclesiastical group that includes not only Spofforth, but also Kirk Deaton, Follyfoot and Little Ribston. It's a Grade 2 listed building, and it's the oldest in the village. Its origins go back to the 12th century, but despite that, most of All Saints is fairly modern. The tower is the oldest part that survives and dates from the 15th century. Most of the rest dates from a Victorian rebuilding undertaken in 1855 by the Reverend James Tripp. The architect for that was J.W. Hugall. Tripp also paid for the school that we'll see later, as well as the ones at Follyfoot and Linton. After restoration, the church was reopened by the Bishop of Ripon. It wasn't without criticism though, as people complained that the seats were incorrectly arranged. People, never happy. Outside the church is a small garden with a handful of notable things. One of them is the War Memorial. 41 men from Spofforth died in World War I, and the name of each and every one is listed both here and on a plaque inside the church. This garden also features an information board. This mentions the Spofforth crocus, which was developed by William Herbert, a reverend and an avid botanist. The board also makes a mention of the 18th century road builder Blind Jack Metcalfe. He spent his later years living in Spofforth, and now he's buried in the churchyard. So it also tells you what's written on his gravestone as well. There's a poem here, and you can find that on his headstone. I'll read it to you. Here lies John Metcalfe, one whose infant sight felt the dark pressure of an endless night, yet such the fervour of his dauntless mind, his limbs full strong, his spirit unconfined, that long ere yet life's bolder years began, his sightless efforts marked the aspiring man, nor marked in vain high deeds his manhood dared, and commerce travel both his ardor shared. 'Twas his a guide's unerring aid to lend, o'er trackless waste to bid new roads extend, and when rebellion reared her giant size, 'twas his to burn with patriot enterprise, for parting wife and babes one's pang to feel, then welcome danger for his country's weal. Reader like him exert thy utmost talent given, reader like him adore the bounteous hand of heaven. Some difficult words in that. Also within the vicinity is a mounting stone, which is much like the kind we've seen before, so we won't dwell too much on this. As you walk away from the church, you pass both the rectory and the old rectory, the latter of which has a link to the Spofforth crocus. In the summertime, the pretty flower can be found in and around the old rectory and planted in several places around the village. The old rectory garden also has a horse chestnut tree, which was planted in 1704 to commemorate the British victory at the Battle of Blenheim. In addition to all of that, William Herbert's studies of plant hybrids formed part of Charles Darwin's theories in his work on the origin of species. After passing a triangle of grass, we make our way into the first of a few residential areas, twisty, winding lanes like Church Hill. This doesn't last for too long though before it gives way to a much more modern area with broader streets and 20th century housing. This is Mill Close, a steep hill which runs down into the valley of the River Crimple. At the bottom is Grange Avenue, more of the same, but much flatter. A right turn now and Mill Lane takes you towards a dead end. At its limit is the old corn mill, which was mentioned in the Domesday Book. The mill can be reached from the other direction as well via a public footpath that crosses over a small pack-horse bridge over the River Crimple. We turn around at this point and head back towards the village. Here's a grassed area, which as far as I know has no name. It's a handy shortcut though because it offers us a route to Clive Road. We're about to hit a much more well-known public space, the Spofforth Millennium Gardens. The Millennium Garden was created to celebrate the turn of the 21st century. Located on Castle Street, it was officially opened by the Mayor of Harrogate, Councillor Margaret Ann de Courcy Bailey, in November 2004. Present were the chairman of the Yorkshire Land and Country Association, the parish council chairman, and other councillors who saw the fruits of the labour from landscape gardeners Carl and Gary Marston come to life. A speech was given by Councillor June Geddes, who put a lot of time and effort into the project, including various fundraising activities. Now the garden is a haven for everybody that comes to visit. Okay, so once you're through the Millennium Green, you then come to this corner here. Now you can see over there, there's a little opening just past the post van there. That's where we're heading, because that little path will take you to Spof Castle, and this is perhaps the biggest and most important landmark for miles around. The entrance to Spofforth Castle is marked by this English Heritage Board, which gives a few brief details about the ruins. Note the sketching of the castle. That was done in the 1800s, and what stands here today is still remarkably similar. This was of great importance. It was here where the terms of the Magna Carta were first drawn up in 1215 before they were presented to King John at Runnymede. As you enter the grounds, you're met with a series of mountainous earthworks marking the position of the rest of the castle. So what happened to it? Well, here's some history. Before Spofforth Castle came a manor house built shortly after the Norman conquest. The Percy family lived in it for the next 300 years. It became a castle when Henry de Percy was granted a licence to crenellate the building in 1308. However, in the following year, the Percy family acquired Alnwick Castle in Northumberland. Spofforth was then only used occasionally. The Percy estates were confiscated after a rebellion against King Henry IV in 1408 and were given to Sir Thomas Rokeby. They were restored, but then lost again in 1461 after the Battle of Towton. After the battle, the castle was sacked and burned by the victorious Yorkist soldiers. However, stone from the ruins was used to build many of Spofforth's buildings. This is now all that remains, primarily the western side of the original castle, which is built into a rock face. The ruins are Grade 2 listed and they're protected under the guardianship of English Heritage. They're otherwise managed day to day by Spofforth with Stockeld Parish Council. A major tourist attraction, every year the ruins are explored by thousands of people from across Yorkshire and beyond. Behind the castle is another stone structure, but this one is much later. That is a Victorian railway viaduct, a reminder that Spofforth was once on a busy line that linked Leeds to Harrogate and York. The line is long gone, but a little further around this route we will be walking on part of the former trackbed. Now we find ourselves at the end of Manor Garth. This area proudly displays some of the awards Spofforth has been given in the past. There's way too many to list, but hopefully this little montage of the nearby area will give you an idea as to why it's such a popular village. Now we come to the most important communal building in Spofforth, the Village Hall. This is also known as the Long Memorial Hall, but that's nothing to do with its size. This was officially opened in 1928 in recognition of the Long family. They were horse breeders and upstanding citizens of the village. The hall has a range of rooms including a large main hall, a small meeting room, a therapy room available to hire, and even a snooker room. Out here there's a parish notice board, and I had to stretch over the bins to reach this one. Mission accomplished though. Tick it off. Spofforth is in the books. Using a footpath and a side street, we've arrived at the end of School Lane, and that's where the cricket club is located. The village's most famous cricketer was Spofforth native Gerald Smithson, who played for Yorkshire, Leicestershire and England. His grandfather George played for Spofforth for over 50 years. An about turn sees us outside the school, and as we already know, this was built by Reverend James Tripp. He founded the school in 1847, and a stone plaque to commemorate his death in 1879 can be found above one of the cloakroom doors. A bit further down the road is the former Spofforth Methodist Church. No longer in active use, this small and attractive building dates from 1810. It appears still to have been used in 2005. Spofforth also used to have a primitive chapel too, but that's been demolished. It was located on the corner of Chapel Lane. School Lane now turns and takes us back past the Long Memorial Hall again. On this side you can access the village surgery, which is built into the building. And with that we hit Castle Street again, where we find the old post office on the way back to the central mini roundabout. You don't need to go far to find the current post office. Just up the street, right on the roundabout, is the village shop, a Londis store which incorporates the modern post office inside. There's a good bakery and a deli counter in there too. Next door we have the first of the two pubs here. That would be the Castle, which is the larger, and it's a single open plan room. The other pub is the Railway Inn. There were other pubs in the village too at one time. The Prince of Wales in Castle Street closed in around 1927, and the King William IV closed in the early 2000s. The White Horse was another too. Outside the pub is a milepost because the A661 here is the former route of a turnpike. It linked Wetherby, Knaresborough, Pateley Bridge and Grassington together, and its construction began in 1759. Let's follow the A661 south now along the turnpike's route as we make for the southern reaches of Spofforth. All the interesting stuff primarily is in the north here, but it is worth a venture along here if only for a conservation area off East Park Road. Otherwise it's a dead straight road with stone cottages and the occasional farm building. There's the odd small business too. After following the high street for a while, we find ourselves at East Park Road. This is primarily a residential area, but it's what's under our feet here that's of the most significance. We are now walking on the route of the railway line we met earlier. Part of the route has now become the Wetherby Railway Path, which is also known as the Harland Way. The railway came to the village in 1847 with the building of the Harrogate to Church Fenton line, and Spofforth had the only intermediate station between Wetherby and Harrogate. The line closed to passengers in 1964, following the Beeching Acts. Partway down the road is a park with the funny-sounding name of Jinny Greenholes. For a long time, the local community here have developed this into the conservation area it is today with the aid of council funding. Importantly, Jinny Greenholes complements the surrounding wildlife area, which is a nature reserve with an orchard and wildflowers, making it a pleasant space for both children and adults to enjoy and relax. At the back of this little haven of peace and quiet, there runs the River Crimple, the shallow tributary of the Nidd upon which the village stands. Okay, so we've hit a bit of a snag. I was hoping for a bridge across the River Crimple here, or Crimple Beck if you will, that'll take you to a public footpath which is on the other bank, and that runs up to the church, and that would have completed the route in a nice circular fashion. As it is, I'm going to have to turn around and head back up the high street, but I don't mind that, to be fair. Covered quite a lot in this episode, haven't we? So yeah, I've enjoyed myself around Spofforth. Now, we've seen Spofforth, we have yet to see Stockeld, and the reason for that is because that is to the south of the village. This is going to come to you in a special section. I'm unable to film anything of Stockeld because most of it is private land, and you'll see why in a moment. Sited to the south of Spofforth, Stockeld is not so much a village, rather it's a country house called Stockton Park. It was built in the 18th century, it's Grade 1 listed, and it's the home of Peter and Susie Grant. The estate spans some 2,000 acres and broadly covers the area between Wetherby and the villages of Spofforth and Sicklinghall. Historically, the area was known as Stockeld, which means place with a log fire. It formed part of the Percy estate. Around 1315, the Stockeld estate passed to the Middletons of Ilkley. In 1757, William Middleton commissioned the architect James Payne to build the present house, and it was completed by 1763. Middleton died before it was completed, and so its first inhabitant was his great-nephew, William Constable. Constable later left Stockeld to live in his other property in Ilkley, and the house stood empty for 2 decades. Succeeding generations of Middletons continued to live at Ilkley, while Stockeld was leased to tenants. It was eventually sold in 1893 to Robert John Foster, the owner of the Black Dyke Mills in Bradford. Peter Grant is one of his descendants. The mansion itself is constructed of stone in the style of a Palladian villa and features a cantilevered staircase and 18th and 19th century furniture and works of art. There's also a chapel which dates from 1895, and it's a separate Grade 2 listed building. During World War II, the house was requisitioned for use as a maternity hospital. In addition to traditional estate activities including farming, Stockeld Park features Yorkshire's largest Christmas tree plantation. It's estimated there are 500,000 Christmas trees in the grounds. Stockeld is perhaps best known, however, not for Christmas trees, but for its Adventure Park, a seasonal attraction with a range of indoor and outdoor activities that vary depending on the time of year. In winter, for example, Stockeld has ice skating, cross-country skiing, an enchanted forest, a Santa's grotto, and a giant snowflake-shaped yew tree maze. In the summer, there's adventure playgrounds, boating, pedal go-karts, motorised scooters, and a range of themed events. Stockeld will also be known to many people who like a bit of TV. It was used as the fictional Oakwell Hall in the ITV soap Emmerdale. To finish using the car, we'll cover the area between Spofforth and Stockeld, essentially the rest of the high street. Look to your left momentarily and you'll see the second pub, the Railway Inn. It's a Sam Smith's pub, which was converted from 2 old railway cottages, hence the name. My sources tell me it's currently looking for new ownership. Otherwise, the road runs off into the distance, but there is another business down here of note. You just have to know where to go. And that would be up a bumpy track to the left, just before Spofforth becomes Stockeld. This is the Red Hill Farm tea room, which many would think was just a house. Well, it is. It's a tea room based in a farmhouse where a warm welcome awaits walkers, cyclists, motorists and dogs. Most people access this from the old railway path. Folks, that one's been a marathon, hasn't it? There's no way on earth the entire history of Spofforth with Stockeld can be condensed into one video. Trust me, this is just a snapshot of the place. I hope, though, I've inspired you to come and learn more. Take a trip, come and look at the castle ruins, and check out this pretty village, all for yourself. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.